Commander Jake Morrison stood at the center of the diplomatic chamber, aboard the massive alien station orbiting the gas giant Proxima 7. The room was huge beyond anything he had seen before, with walls that seemed to stretch up forever into darkness. Strange lights floated in the air without any visible source, casting shadows that moved in ways that hurt his eyes to follow. Jake wore his best dress uniform, the dark blue fabric pressed to perfection, his metals polished until they gleamed. Behind him stood his small team of humans, all trying their best to look dignified despite feeling completely out of place. Dr. Lisa Martinez clutched her translation device with white knuckles, her dark hair pulled back severely as she studied the alien beings around them. The first species Jake met were the Zephyrians. They looked like living crystals shaped into the rough form of people, but taller and more graceful than any human could ever be. When they spoke, their voices rang like perfect music, each word flowing into the next with mathematical precision. The sounds they made reminded Jake of wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but somehow he knew these beings were anything but gentle. High Arbiter Keth Mora towered above the human delegation, his crystal body reflecting the floating lights in patterns that seemed to pulse with meaning. When he looked down at Jake, the human commander felt like an ant being examined by a scientist with a magnifying glass. "So these are the new primitives," Keth Mora said, his voice creating harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. "The ones who still use mouth sounds to communicate," Jake tried to respond with dignity. "We are honored to meet with the Galactic Confederation. Earth hopes to establish peaceful relations with all member species." The crystal being's laughter sounded like breaking glass, but beautiful breaking glass that somehow conveyed deep amusement. "Mouth sounds," he repeated to the other aliens in the chamber. "They push air through holes in their faces and call it language." The second species present were the Nethak, who looked like giant beetles covered in armor made of their own shells. Instead of speaking, colored lights danced across their bodies in complex patterns. Jake watched as waves of blue and green light rippled from head to tail on the nearest Nethak representative, the patterns so intricate they made his head spin trying to follow them. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, her voice steady despite the obvious nervousness in her eyes. "We understand that our communication methods may seem simple to your advanced civilizations, but we have much to offer in terms of cultural exchange and scientific cooperation." The Nethak's response was a burst of angry red lights that flashed so quickly Jake had to look away. Through his translation device he heard the rough meaning: cultural exchange. What culture could mouth breathers possibly have that would interest evolved beings? The third group present called themselves the Vorthak Collective, and they were the strangest of all. They looked somewhat human in basic shape, but their heads were larger and covered in what looked like silver mesh. Jake realized after a few minutes that they were not speaking at all, not even to each other. Instead, they seemed to share thoughts directly, their silver-covered heads glowing softly when they communicated. One of the Vorthak finally addressed the humans, not through sound but through a direct mental transmission that came through their translation equipment. "We sense the crude electrical patterns in your neural tissue. Your thoughts are loud and chaotic, like static on a communication channel. How do you function with such primitive brain activity?" Jake felt his temper rising but forced himself to remain calm. "We may communicate differently than you, but we have achieved faster-than-light travel and have established peaceful contact protocols. We are not as primitive as you seem to think." This brought what could only be described as laughter from all three species, though each expressed it differently. The Zephyrians created a symphony of crystal chimes. The Nethak flashed patterns of yellow and orange lights, and the Vorthak sent waves of amused mental energy that made Jake's head ache. Captain Ryan Cooper, who had been standing silently behind Jake, stepped forward. His weathered face showed no emotion, but Jake knew him well enough to see the anger burning behind his gray eyes. "Perhaps you could explain what we need to do to earn membership in this confederation." High Arbiter Keth Mora's crystal form shifted colors, becoming a deeper blue. "Membership requires proof of advanced civilization. Your species must demonstrate higher-order communication abilities, not these crude vocalizations you use." "What exactly do you mean by higher-order communication?" Dr. Martinez asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her diplomatic caution. The Zephyrian gestured toward his fellow aliens. "True communication transcends the physical limitations of primitive species. We Zephyrians speak in pure harmonic mathematics, conveying complex concepts through resonant frequencies that align with universal constants. The Nethak use bioluminescent pattern languages that can express millions of nuanced meanings simultaneously. The Vorthak share thoughts directly through quantum-entangled neural networks. He paused, and Jake could swear the alien was enjoying this moment. Your species pushes air through crude organic passages to create random noise. You have no depth, no complexity, no elegance in your communication. It is barely above the level of animal sounds. Lieutenant Sarah Williams, the youngest member of their diplomatic team, spoke up for the first time. But we have poetry. We have music. We have literature that has moved our people to tears and laughter for thousands of years. How is that not elegant? The response was immediate and cutting. The Nethak representative flashed a pattern of sharp purple lights, while the Vorthak sent a wave of dismissive mental energy. Kethmora's voice carried a tone that Jake's translation device could only render as contempt. Emotional manipulation through sound patterns is not communication. It is primitive conditioning, no different from the mating calls of lower animals. True intelligence communicates ideas, not feelings. Dr. Martinez made one more attempt. We have complex mathematics, advanced physics, detailed scientific theories. Surely our scientific achievements prove our intelligence. Any species can stumble upon technology through random trial and error, the Vorthak representative transmitted. Achieving spaceflight does not prove intelligence, only persistence. True intelligence is demonstrated through communication that transcends physical limitations. The formal session continued for another 2 hours, but Jake could see it was hopeless. Every attempt the humans made to demonstrate their worth was dismissed or ridiculed. Their language was too simple, their thoughts too chaotic. Their entire approach to communication too primitive for these advanced beings to take seriously. Finally, Kethmora announced the Confederation's decision. The human species will be granted observer status for a probationary period of 1 galactic year. During this time, you may observe our proceedings and learn from our example. If you can evolve beyond your current primitive communication methods, you may eventually qualify for consideration as junior members. The crystal being's voice took on what Jake's translator rendered as false sympathy. Do not despair. Perhaps in a few millennia, when your species has evolved beyond making mouth noises at each other, you will be ready to join civilized society. As the session ended and the various alien species departed, Jake found himself standing alone with his team in the vast chamber. The floating lights continued their strange dance overhead, casting moving shadows that seemed to mock their failure. Well, that went about as badly as it could have, Captain Cooper said, his voice heavy with disappointment. Dr. Martinez was staring at her translation device with a puzzled expression. There's something strange here. These aliens keep referring to communication methods that transcend physical limitations, but they're all still using physical processes. The Zephyrians use sound waves. The Nethak use light patterns. The Vorthak use electromagnetic fields. None of that is truly beyond the physical. Jake nodded, but his mind was already moving toward practical concerns. Right now, we need to figure out how to report this back to Earth. How do we tell humanity that we've made contact with galactic civilization, but they think we're too stupid to join? As they prepared to return to their ship, Jake took one last look around the chamber. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that there was more to this situation than met the eye. But for now, all he could focus on was the humiliation of being dismissed as savages by beings who saw themselves as gods. Dr. Lisa Martinez sat in the quiet research section of the human ship Liberty, surrounded by holographic displays showing thousands of alien text samples. 3 months had passed since their humiliating first meeting with the Galactic Confederation, and she had spent every waking hour studying the massive digital libraries the aliens had grudgingly allowed them to access. The ship drifted in orbit around Confederation Prime, the massive space station that served as the political center of galactic civilization. Through the small porthole next to her desk, Lisa could see ships from dozens of different species coming and going, their designs so alien that her mind struggled to understand how they could possibly fly. Dr. Alex Turner walked into the research bay carrying 2 cups of coffee, his usually neat brown hair disheveled from hours of work. "Any luck with the translation algorithms?" he asked, setting 1 cup next to Lisa's elbow. Lisa rubbed her tired eyes and shook her head. "The surface languages are easy enough to decode, but there's something underneath. Every species has references to something they call the first tongue, but none of them seem to know what it actually was. She pulled up a new display showing text samples from different alien archives. Look at this. The Zephyrians call it the pure language. The Nethak refer to it as the original pattern. The Vorthak have dozens of different names for it, but they all translate roughly to the speech that came before. Alex leaned over her shoulder to study the displays. What exactly are they saying about this first tongue? That's what's strange, Lisa said, highlighting sections of text as she spoke. They all seem to worship it. Every major religion in the galaxy has stories about ancient beings who spoke this perfect language. But none of them can actually read it or understand it anymore. Dr. Nicole Hayes entered the research bay at that moment, her arms full of mathematical tablets and data pads. The young mathematician had been working with the alien computers for weeks, trying to understand the logic behind their advanced technologies. I've been analyzing the mathematical structures in their oldest archives, Nicole said, setting her materials down on the central table. There are patterns here that don't match anything in their current languages. It's like someone built a mathematical framework for communication. But all the modern alien languages are just simplified versions of something much more complex. Lisa turned away from her displays with sudden interest. Show me. Nicole activated her tablet and projected a three-dimensional mathematical model into the air above the table. This is what I found buried in the deepest layers of the Confederation archives. It's not just mathematics. It's mathematics designed to be spoken. The model showed intricate patterns that seemed to flow and shift like living things. Alex stared at it with growing excitement. This looks almost like a phonetic structure, as if someone created a way to encode pure mathematical concepts into sounds that could be pronounced. Exactly, Nicole said. But here's the really strange part. I've been comparing this to human vocal anatomy, and our throats and mouths are perfectly designed to produce these specific sound patterns. The alien species can't physically make most of these sounds, but humans could. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying this ancient language was designed for beings like us? I'm saying it was designed for beings who communicate through controlled air vibrations. Using tongues and teeth and lips to shape sounds, Nicole replied. Beings exactly like humans. The three scientists stared at each other in silence for several moments. Finally, Alex spoke up. This is crazy. Are we suggesting that humans somehow knew this ancient language? Lisa turned back to her displays and began pulling up more files. Not knew it, but maybe we're related to whoever created it. She paused, her fingers hovering over the controls. I need to show you something else I found. She brought up a series of images from archaeological sites across the galaxy. Each image showed ancient ruins covered in symbols that looked nothing like the writing systems used by modern alien species. These symbols appear on every world where intelligent life evolved, Lisa explained. The Confederation has been studying them for thousands of years, but they've never been able to translate them. Their computers can't make sense of the patterns, their linguists can't find any logical structure. Nicole leaned closer to examine the symbols. They're not random. There's definitely a pattern here, but it's not visual. It's phonetic, Alex finished. These aren't pictures or symbols. They're representations of sounds. Lisa nodded slowly. That's exactly what I thought. And if we're right about the first tongue being designed for vocal communication, then these symbols might be a written form of that same language. She pulled up close-up images of the symbols from different worlds. Despite being separated by thousands of light years and millions of years, the symbols were remarkably consistent. Look at how similar these are even across such vast distances and time periods. It's as if the same people left these markings on every world in the galaxy. Alex was studying the mathematical models Nicole had created. If this language really is based on vocal sounds, and if humans are physically capable of producing those sounds, then maybe we could actually learn to read these symbols. Learn to read them, Lisa said quietly, or remember how to read them. Nicole looked up from her tablet with a puzzled expression. Remember? What do you mean? Lisa called up another set of files, these ones from Earth's own archaeological records. I've been comparing these alien symbols to some of humanity's oldest written languages. Sumerian, Egyptian hieroglyphs, ancient Chinese characters. There are similarities that go beyond coincidence. She projected images of ancient Earth artifacts next to the alien archaeological findings. The similarities were subtle but unmistakable. Certain curved lines, specific angular patterns, recurring geometric shapes. Human civilization is supposed to be only about 10,000 years old, Lisa continued. But what if that's not the beginning of human intelligence? What if it's just the beginning of our current civilization? Alex sat down heavily in one of the research chairs. You're suggesting that humans had an advanced civilization before recorded history? A civilization that somehow spread across the galaxy? I'm suggesting that maybe humanity didn't evolve on Earth, Lisa said. Maybe Earth is where we ended up after our original civilization fell apart. The implications of this theory hung in the air like a physical presence. Nicole was the first to break the silence. If that's true, then these ancient symbols might not be impossible to translate. They might be something we can understand naturally. Lisa nodded and pulled up a specific image from the archives. It showed a massive stone structure on a dead world at the edge of Confederation space, covered in the mysterious symbols from base to peak. There's something else, she said. The Confederation has been monitoring this structure for decades. It's some kind of monument or obelisk over 2 kilometers tall. Every few years, their deep space sensors detect energy readings from it, as if it's trying to activate. But nothing they've tried has been able to make it respond. Alex studied the image of the towering structure. And you think this might be connected to the first tongue? I think it might be written in the first tongue, Lisa replied. And if we're right about humans being able to produce the sounds of that language, then maybe we're the only species in the galaxy who could actually read it. Nicole was running calculations on her tablet. The energy readings the Confederation detected, they matched the mathematical patterns I found in the archives. This structure isn't just covered in symbols. It's designed to respond to specific acoustic frequencies. Sound frequencies that only humans can produce, Alex said, understanding dawning in his voice. Lisa turned to look out the porthole at the bustling traffic around Confederation Prime. We need to request permission to study that obelisk directly. If we're right about this, it could change everything. And if we're wrong, Nicole asked, then we'll just be confirming what the aliens already think about us, Lisa replied. That we're primitive savages who don't understand the first thing about advanced civilization. Alex stood up and began pacing around the research bay. But if we're right, if we can actually activate that structure and prove that humans have a connection to the first tongue, then the entire foundation of the Confederation's superiority complex crumbles. Lisa saved all their research files and began preparing a formal request for the Confederation authorities. There's only one way to find out. We need to convince Commander Morrison to take us to that dead world and let us try to read those symbols. She paused in her typing and looked at her 2 colleagues. Are we really prepared for what we might discover? If we're right about this, it means human history is completely different from what we thought. It means we might be the descendants of the most advanced civilization the galaxy has ever known. Nicole smiled for the first time in weeks. It also means we might finally have something to teach these aliens, instead of just being their primitive students. The 3 scientists spent the rest of the night preparing their case, gathering evidence and organizing their theories. Outside their porthole, the lights of Confederation Prime continued their eternal dance. But inside the research bay of the Liberty, the foundations of everything they do, the expedition fleet arrived at Kepler 442b after a 3-week journey through hyperspace. Dr. Lisa Martinez pressed her face against the observation window of the Liberty as the dead planet came into view. Its surface a patchwork of gray stone and ancient impact craters under the light of a dying red star. Commander Jake Morrison stood beside her, studying the tactical displays that showed the positions of ships from 5 different alien species. The Confederation had assembled their largest archaeological expedition in decades, all because of the research Lisa and her team had presented. There it is, Dr. Alex Turner said, pointing toward the planet's largest continent. Even from orbit, the obelisk was visible as a dark line rising from the barren landscape into the thin atmosphere. High Arbiter Keth Mora's crystalline voice filled the communications channel. All teams will maintain safe distances from the artifact until preliminary scans are complete. We cannot risk damaging such an important archaeological site with primitive investigation methods. Lisa felt her jaw clench at the casual insult, but Commander Morrison placed a calming hand on her shoulder. Over the past months, they had learned to ignore the aliens' constant reminders of humanity's supposed inferiority. Dr. Nicole Hayes was studying the sensor readings from her station. The structure is definitely artificial. It's made from some kind of crystalline material that our computers don't recognize. and it's generating a low-level energy field that pulses every few minutes. The landing party assembled in the Liberty's cargo bay 2 hours later. Lisa wore her environmental suit with the new translation equipment they had developed specifically for this mission. Unlike the standard translators that converted alien languages into human speech, this device was designed to help her pronounce the complex sound patterns they had discovered in the First Tongue archives. Jake led the mixed group of humans and aliens down to the planet's surface. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth normal, making each step feel like a small bounce. The obelisk loomed ahead of them, its surface covered in flowing symbols that seemed to shift and change in the red sunlight. Dr. Zethkar, the lead Nethak archaeologist, scuttled around the base of the monument with his scanning equipment. Patterns of blue and green lights flickered across his shell as he communicated with his assistants. Through the translation system, his report came through as, "Preliminary analysis confirms the age estimates. This structure is at least 50,000 years old, predating any known galactic civilization." The Vorthak representative, a being called Mindsinger Velthara, stood motionless near the obelisk with her silver mesh head glowing softly. Her mental transmission reached the entire team simultaneously. "The quantum resonance patterns are unlike anything in our databases. The structure appears to be designed as some form of communication device, but the activation method is unknown." High Arbiter Kethmora approached the monument with reverence that bordered on worship. His crystal body had shifted to deep purple, a color Lisa had learned indicated profound awe among his species. "The symbols are identical to those found in our most sacred temples. If we could unlock their meaning, we would finally understand the words of the first speakers." Lisa stepped closer to the obelisk, ignoring the nervous chatter from the alien scientists. The symbols covering its surface were exactly what she had expected, not random markings, but carefully structured representations of sounds and vocal patterns. "Dr. Martinez," Commander Morrison said quietly through their private comm channel, "are you ready to try this?" Lisa nodded and activated her translation device. She had spent weeks practicing the pronunciation patterns Nicole had derived from the mathematical analysis. Her throat felt dry despite the recycled air in her suit. She began with the symbols at the base of the obelisk, the ones that seemed most basic according to their analysis. The sounds that came from her mouth were unlike anything in any human language, complex tones that seemed to resonate not just in the air, but somehow in the crystal structure itself. As Lisa spoke the first sequence of symbols, the obelisk began to respond. A soft glow started at the base where she was reading, then slowly spread upward along the monument's surface. The alien scientists stepped back in shock as the ancient structure came alive for the first time in millennia. "Impossible." Kethamora's voice carried harmonics of disbelief. "The artifact has been silent for over 20,000 years. How can these mouth sounds activate what our most advanced technology could not?" Lisa continued reading, her confidence growing as the obelisk's response became stronger. The symbols seemed to flow into each other, creating a narrative that she could follow even without fully understanding every individual sound. Suddenly, holographic images began appearing in the air around the monument. Star maps filled the space above their heads, showing the galaxy as it had existed thousands of years ago. Planets that were now dead rocks appeared lush and green, connected by trade routes and communication networks that spanned the entire spiral arm. Dr. Alex Turner was recording everything on his portable scanner, his voice filled with excitement as he spoke into his recorder. "The images show a civilization that covered hundreds of star systems. The technology displayed here is beyond anything the current Confederation has achieved." The holographic display shifted to show the beings who had built this monument. Lisa's breath caught in her throat as she saw figures that looked remarkably human. Bipedal, with the same basic body structure, the same kind of faces, walking upright through cities that floated among the stars. Mindsinger Velthara's mental transmission was filled with confusion and awe. "These are the first speakers from our oldest religious texts, but they appear to be the same species as the humans. This cannot be correct." Lisa continued reading from the obelisk, and the holographic story unfolded before them. The ancient civilization had indeed been remarkably similar to modern humans, but with technology that allowed them to reshape worlds and travel between stars as easily as walking between rooms. The display showed their downfall, not from war or disaster, but from something far more subtle. The advanced beings had become so dependent on their technology that they began to lose touch with the basic skills that had allowed them to build their civilization in the first place. Dr. Sethkar's shell flashed with patterns of rapid orange and red lights. His translation came through as urgent excitement. The narrative indicates that as their technology advanced, they stopped using vocal communication. They began to rely entirely on direct neural interfaces and quantum communication networks. The holographic story continued, showing how the loss of spoken language had led to the breakdown of their society. Without the ability to communicate naturally with each other, the ancient humans had become isolated, unable to maintain the social bonds that held their civilization together. Nicole was studying the energy readings from her scanner. The obelisk is showing massive power increases. Lisa, whatever you're reading is activating systems throughout the entire structure. As Lisa read the final sequences of symbols, the holographic display showed the end of the ancient civilization. Groups of survivors had fled to distant worlds, abandoning their advanced technology and starting over with only the most basic tools. The obelisk itself had been built as a record and a warning, a monument, to remind any descendants who might eventually rediscover it about the importance of maintaining their fundamental nature. The last hologram showed one of the refugee ships arriving at a small blue world orbiting a yellow star. Lisa recognized the continental shapes immediately. It was Earth, but Earth as it had existed 50,000 years ago. High Arbiter Kethamora stood in stunned silence as the implications became clear. His crystal body had shifted through several colors before settling on a pale silver that Lisa had never seen before. "The humans are not primitives," he said, his voice carrying none of its usual condescension. "They are the survivors of the first speakers, the ones we have worshipped for millennia." Dr. Alex Turner was staring at the star map that still floated above their heads. "This explains everything. Why human vocal anatomy is perfectly suited for this language. Why our mathematics align with these ancient patterns. Why Earth's archaeology has so many gaps." The obelisk began to pulse with brighter energy as Lisa finished reading the main narrative. Additional systems throughout the structure were activating, revealing hidden chambers and storage areas that had been sealed for thousands of years. Mind Singer. Velthara's mental transmission reached them with a tone Lisa had never heard before, something that could only be described as reverence. "The quantum patterns are stabilizing. The monument is fully operational for the first time since our oldest historical records began." Commander Morrison stepped forward, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they had discovered. "What does this mean for the Confederation? What does it mean for humanity's membership status?" Lisa looked around at the alien scientists, all of whom were staring at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. Fear, awe, confusion, and something that might have been hope were all mixed together in their reactions. "It means," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, "that we need to have a very different conversation about intelligence, communication, and what it The news of what happened on Kepler 442b spread through the Galactic Confederation like wildfire. Within days of their return, emergency sessions were being called on every member world. Dr. Lisa Martinez found herself at the center of a galaxy-wide crisis that threatened to overturn thousands of years of established beliefs. Commander Jake Morrison sat in his quarters aboard the Liberty, reading report after report of chaos spreading through alien space. Religious leaders were demanding audiences, scientists were requesting immediate access to human linguists, and politicians were scrambling to understand what this discovery meant for the balance of power in the galaxy. Dr. Alex Turner knocked on Jake's door and entered without waiting for permission. His usually neat appearance was disheveled, and dark circles under his eyes showed he had not slept in days. "Jake, you need to see what we found in the Vorthak archives." Alex activated a portable holographic display and showed Jake a collection of ancient texts from different worlds across the galaxy. After Lisa proved she could read the first tongue, every species in the Confederation started digging deeper into their own historical records. Look at what they found. The first document was from the Zephyrian homeworld, carved into crystal formations deep beneath their oldest temples. Alex pointed to specific sections that had been translated into human language. They call their creators the Breath Shapers, beings who could speak life into empty worlds and make dead stones sing with their voices. The next document came from Nethak Religious Archives, patterns of light encoded in bioluminescent organisms that had been preserved for millennia. The Nethak creation myths describe the voice weavers, beings who shaped reality through sacred sounds and taught the first Nethak how to communicate through light patterns. Jake studied the translations with growing amazement. These sound like descriptions of humans. That's exactly what they are, Alex said, bringing up the final document from Vorthak Quantum Storage Systems. The Vorthak have the most detailed records. They described the first speakers as bipedal beings who communicated through controlled air vibrations, who could make their thoughts known through shaped breath and tongue movements. Alex highlighted specific passages in the Vorthak text. Listen to this description. They stood tall on two legs with flexible faces that could form countless expressions. Their voices could create sounds of infinite complexity, and through these sounds they could command the very forces of creation. They taught our ancestors the gift of shared thought, but warned that we must never forget the sacred nature of spoken words. Jake set down the reports he had been reading and focused entirely on what Alex was showing him. Are you saying that every major species in the galaxy has creation myths about humans? Not just creation myths, Alex replied. Detailed religious texts that describe human beings teaching them how to communicate. The Zephyrians learned harmonic resonance by listening to human speech patterns. The Nethak developed their light languages by trying to create visual representations of human vocal sounds. The Vorthak built their neural networks to share thoughts the way humans share words. Dr. Nicole Hayes appeared in the doorway, carrying an armload of data tablets and looking as exhausted as Alex. I've been running genetic analysis on the biological samples the aliens provided for diplomatic health screening. Jake, you need to see these results. She activated her own display system and showed a complex genetic map. Human DNA contains sequences that don't match any evolutionary pattern on Earth. We have genetic markers that are completely unique, but they're not random mutations. They're clearly artificial modifications. Nicole highlighted specific sections of the genetic code. Someone deliberately altered human genetics at some point in our distant past. These modifications enhanced our vocal abilities, improved our pattern recognition for languages, and increased our capacity for complex sound production. Jake stared at the genetic analysis. Enhanced our vocal abilities for what purpose? For speaking the first tongue, Nicole replied. Whoever our ancestors were, they modified themselves to be perfect speakers of their mathematical language. But more importantly, they also modified us to be universal translators. Alex looked up from his documents. Universal translators. Nicole nodded and brought up a new display showing comparative analysis of human vocal anatomy. Human throats can produce a wider range of sounds than any other known species. We can imitate Zephyrian harmonic resonance, approximate Nethak bioluminescent patterns through vocal rhythm, and even simulate Vorthak neural frequencies through specific breathing techniques. We were designed to communicate with other species, Jake said, understanding beginning to dawn on him. We were designed to teach other species how to communicate, Nicole corrected. The genetic modifications weren't just about preserving the first tongue. They were about ensuring that humans would always be able to help other forms of life develop language and consciousness. Dr. Lisa Martinez entered Jake's quarters at that moment, looking more tired than any of them but carrying an expression of intense excitement. I've been working with the linguistic analysis teams from all the major species. Jake, we've made an incredible discovery. She activated her own holographic display and showed a complex diagram that looked like a family tree. This is a linguistic genealogy of every known language in the galaxy. Watch what happens when we trace them all back to their common roots. The diagram began to compress and simplify, showing how different alien languages had evolved over time. As it traced backward through millennia, the various branches began to converge on a single point of origin. Every single language in the galaxy evolved from the first tongue, Lisa said. But that's not the amazing part. The amazing part is how they evolved. She highlighted different evolutionary paths on the diagram. The Zephyrian harmonic languages developed from attempts to recreate human speech using crystal resonance. Nethak bioluminescence started as visual representations of human vocal patterns. Vorthak neural sharing began as an attempt to transmit human words directly from mind to mind. Alex stared at the linguistic family tree. They didn't develop their own languages naturally. They learned to communicate by trying to copy humans. More than that, Lisa continued. Every species in the galaxy developed intelligence by learning to communicate, and they all learned to communicate by interacting with the ancient human civilization that spread across the galaxy 50,000 years ago. Nicole was studying her genetic data alongside Lisa's linguistic analysis. This explains the modifications in human DNA. Our ancestors didn't just preserve their own language when their civilization collapsed. They ensured that any survivors would still be able to help other species develop language and consciousness. Jake stood up and walked to the porthole that looked out at Confederation Prime. The massive space station was busier than ever, with ships arriving from every corner of the galaxy as the implications of their discovery spread. "What does this mean for us now?" he asked. "What does it mean for humanity's place in the galaxy?" Lisa joined him at the porthole. "It means we're not the primitive species that needs to prove itself worthy of membership. We're the parent species that every other civilization in the galaxy descended from intellectually." Alex was still studying the documents from the alien archives. The religious texts all mention something else. They say the first speakers left behind more than just monuments and teaching. They left behind guardian installations throughout the galaxy, automated systems designed to maintain balance and protect developing civilizations. Nicole looked up from her genetic analysis. "Guardian installations? You mean there are ancient human facilities still operating out there?" "According to these texts, yes," Alex replied. "The Vorthak archives mention installations that have been maintaining planetary atmospheres. The Nethak records describe automated systems that prevented asteroid impacts on inhabited worlds, and the Zephyrian texts talk about energy networks that have been powering their civilization for thousands of years, without anyone understanding how they work." Lisa felt a chill of realization. We've been living in a galaxy that's been protected and maintained by our own ancestors' technology for 50,000 years, and nobody knew it. Jake turned away from the porthole to face his team. "How many species know about this now?" "All of them," Lisa replied. "The Confederation Council called an emergency session for tomorrow. Every member species is sending their highest representatives. They want answers, and they're looking to us to provide them." Alex gathered up his documents and data tablets. "The question is, what do we tell them? That their entire understanding of galactic history is wrong. That their gods were actually our ancestors. That their civilizations exist only because ancient humans taught them how to think." Nicole was saving her genetic analysis to secure storage. "We tell them the truth. But more importantly, we help them understand what that truth means for the future." Jake looked around at his team of scientists who had uncovered one of the most significant discoveries in galactic history. "And what does it mean for the future?" Lisa smiled for the first time in days. "It means that humanity isn't trying to join galactic civilization. Galactic civilization has been trying to remember how to be human." Outside their porthole, the great assembly chamber of Confederation Prime had never held so many beings from so many different worlds. Dr. Lisa Martinez walked through the massive entrance doors with Commander Jake Morrison at her side, both of them wearing their finest diplomatic uniforms despite knowing that every eye in the chamber would be focused on them with a mixture of awe, fear, and desperate curiosity. The chamber itself was a testament to galactic cooperation, designed to accommodate the needs of every member species. The Zephyrians occupied crystal platforms that amplified their harmonic speech, while the Nethak delegation spread across bioluminescent panels that displayed their light pattern communications. The Vorthak representatives sat in neural interface chairs that allowed them to share thoughts directly with their quantum networks. But today, all of these advanced communication systems seemed somehow primitive compared to the simple, active human speech that had unlocked secrets the galaxy had been seeking for thousands of years. High Arbiter Keth Mora called the session to order, his crystal form shifting through colors that Lisa had learned to recognize as profound uncertainty. "We gather today to hear testimony from the human delegation regarding discoveries that may fundamentally alter our understanding of galactic civilization." His voice carried none of the condescension that had marked their first meeting months ago. Instead, there was something that sounded almost like reverence, mixed with the kind of fear that comes from having the foundation of your world suddenly shift beneath your feet. Lisa stepped forward to address the assembly, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic systems. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Confederation, we stand before you not as supplicants seeking membership, but as descendants of those who helped create the very concept of galactic civilization. A ripple of harmonic tones, flashing lights, and mental energy swept through the chamber as her words were translated into hundreds of different languages and communication methods. Dr. Alex Turner activated the holographic display system, filling the air above the assembly with the star maps and historical records they had discovered on Kepler 442b. The evidence is clear and undeniable. 50,000 years ago, an advanced human civilization spread across this galaxy, not as conquerors, but as teachers. The display showed the ancient human settlements, their technology, and most importantly, their interactions with the primitive species that would eventually become the modern Confederation members. Nicole Hayes stepped forward to present the genetic evidence. Human DNA contains artificial modifications designed specifically for communication and language instruction. Our ancestors altered themselves to be able to communicate with any form of life they encountered. The Nethak delegation leader, Dr. Zethkar, flashed patterns of rapid blue and yellow lights. Through the translation system, his question came through clearly. If humans are the descendants of the first speakers, why did your civilization fall? What happened to beings we considered gods? Lisa looked out at the assembled representatives, seeing in their alien features the same expression she had seen on human faces when confronting difficult truths about their own history. Our civilization didn't fall because of war or disaster. It fell because we forgot the most important lesson about intelligence and communication. She gestured to Alex, who changed the holographic display to show the final chapters of the ancient human story. As our technology advanced, we began to rely more and more on direct neural interfaces, quantum communication networks, and artificial intelligence systems. We stopped using our voices, stopped speaking to each other directly. The images showed the gradual breakdown of the ancient human society as people became isolated within their technological cocoons, unable to maintain the personal connections that had originally allowed them to build their civilization. The lesson of the first tongue isn't that advanced technology is dangerous, Lisa continued. It's that no matter how sophisticated our tools become, we must never lose the fundamental ability to reach out to other minds through the simple act of communication. Mind singer Velthara of the Vorthak collective transmitted a question that reached every being in the chamber simultaneously. What does this knowledge mean for the future of the Confederation? How should we respond to learning that our gods still walk among us? Commander Morrison stepped forward, his weathered face showing the weight of command but also a quiet confidence that had grown over their months of discovery. We're not your gods, and we don't want to be treated as such. We're your cousins, your siblings in the great family of galactic intelligence. He paused to let the translation systems catch up, then continued. Every species in this chamber developed consciousness by learning from ancient humans, but that doesn't make you less than us. It makes us all part of the same story. Lisa activated a new section of the holographic display, showing the Guardian installations that Alex had discovered in the alien archives. The ancient human civilization left behind more than just monuments and teaching. They created automated systems that have been protecting and nurturing galactic civilization for 50,000 years. The images showed massive installations hidden in asteroid fields, on dead moons and in the depths of space between stars. Energy networks that had prevented solar flares from sterilizing inhabited worlds. Deflector systems that had redirected dangerous asteroids. Atmospheric processors that had maintained breathable air on thousands of planets. These Guardian systems are still operating, Nicole added. They've been the invisible foundation that allowed galactic civilization to flourish, and most of them are starting to break down after 50 millennia of operation. A new voice joined the discussion as Ambassador Thysiandra of the Altarian Federation spoke through her species' complex musical language. Are you saying that human knowledge is necessary to maintain these ancient systems? Not just maintain them, Lisa replied. Improve them, expand them, and most importantly, understand them well enough to build new ones as galactic civilization continues to grow. High Arbiter Kethamora's crystal form had shifted to deep gold, a color Lisa had never seen him display before. What do you propose as the path forward? How should the Confederation proceed with this knowledge? Lisa looked around the chamber at representatives of species from across the galaxy. each one struggling to understand their place in a universe that had suddenly become much more complex and interconnected than they had ever imagined. "We propose partnership," she said simply. "Not human dominance, not Confederation submission, but true cooperation between all the children of the galaxy." Alex brought up a new display showing proposed joint research projects. "There are thousands of ancient installations that need maintenance, millions of worlds that could benefit from the Guardian technologies, and countless opportunities to apply the principles of the first tongue to improve communication between species. More importantly," Nicole added, "there are probably other civilizations out there beyond Confederation space that are struggling to develop language and consciousness. With our combined knowledge and resources, we could help them the way the ancient humans once helped your ancestors." Commander Morrison addressed the practical concerns that he knew were running through every delegate's mind. "This doesn't mean dissolving the Confederation or abandoning your cultures and governments. It means expanding our understanding of what galactic civilization can become." Lisa stepped forward for her final statement. "The ancient humans made one crucial mistake. They forgot that communication is about more than just transmitting information. It's about building connections, creating understanding, and maintaining the bonds that hold civilizations together." She gestured to the diverse assembly around her. "Look around this chamber. Every species here communicates differently, thinks differently, approaches problems from unique perspectives. That diversity isn't an obstacle to overcome. It's the greatest strength our galaxy possesses." The chamber fell silent as her words were translated and processed by hundreds of different minds. Finally, High Arbiter Keth Mora spoke for the entire assembly. "The Galactic Confederation formally recognizes humanity as full members with all rights and privileges thereof. More than that, we request that human representatives join the High Council as permanent advisors on matters of communication, archaeology, and ancient technology." The vote was unanimous, but Lisa knew that the real work was just beginning. As the assembly dispersed and delegates began forming working groups to address the massive implications of their discoveries, she found herself standing with Jake and her team at the center of a transformation that would reshape galactic civilization. "So what happens now?" Alex asked as they watched representatives from dozens of species approaching with proposals for joint research projects. Lisa smiled as she watched a young Nethak researcher attempting to practice human-style vocal sounds while a Zephyrian linguist listened with patient attention. "Now we remember what the ancient humans forgot, that the greatest technology we possess isn't in our machines or our computers, it's in our ability to reach across the void between different minds and find the common ground that makes communication possible. Outside the great windows of Confederation Prime, ships from every corner of the galaxy